The night was cold, and the small city street was silent except for the sound of the wind. May held her little son tightly in her arms, wrapping him in her thin shawl. She tried to keep him warm, but the cloth was too light and the wind kept finding its way through. Her son's small hands were freezing. His face was pale and his lips trembled. May rubbed his tiny fingers with her hands, trying to give him even a little bit of warmth. She had walked for hours that day. Her legs ached and her shoes were worn out. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she tried to ignore it. It was nothing new to her. For many nights she had slept without food. But what broke her heart was watching her little boy suffer. She could bear hunger. She could bear pain, but she could not bear to see him in this state. May once had a different life. A small but warm home. A husband who used to smile. A future she thought was safe. But everything changed 1 year ago when her husband left without a word. He had debts, and when people came to collect money, there was nothing left. May had to sell everything she owned. The furniture, her jewelry, even the small sewing machine she once loved. Piece by piece, her life disappeared, leaving only a few old clothes and the child in her arms. She was not a weak woman. She tried everything she could. She worked in the market, cleaning floors, washing clothes, and carrying heavy baskets for strangers. Sometimes she earned just enough to buy a piece of bread and a bowl of rice, but work was not always easy to find. Many people saw her as a burden, a woman with a child who could not work fast enough, so they turned her away. That evening was one of those days when nothing went right. She had woken up before sunrise, left her small room with her son, and walked from door to door. She begged for work, just a few hours to clean or wash dishes, but no one had a job for her. Some didn't even let her finish her sentence before closing the door. Some looked at her with pity, some with annoyance. By afternoon, her boy's feet were tired and his little stomach made soft, painful sounds. May had given him the last piece of bread that morning. She didn't eat anything herself. She sat with him on a wooden bench, whispering, "Just a little longer. I'll find something." But deep down, her heart felt heavy. She was scared. When the sun went down, the wind became sharper. The streets grew quiet as people went inside their warm homes. May had nowhere to go. Her small rented room was far away, and she didn't even have money to pay the rent that night. She held her son close as she walked slowly down the street. The lamps flickered weakly, and the shadows of trees stretched like long fingers on the ground. Her son coughed softly, a tired sound that made her heart squeeze. He had been sick for days. She had no money for a doctor. She had tried to keep him warm, but the cold didn't care. She whispered to him again and again, "It will be okay. Mama will take care of you." But she was not sure how. As she turned a corner, she saw a grand house standing tall. The lights inside were bright. The gate was strong and clean, and the smell of food drifted through the air. It reminded her of the days when she used to cook warm soup for her family. Those memories hurt now. They were like a dream she could not touch anymore. She stood near the gate for a long time, looking at the windows where people were laughing inside. She imagined a table full of food, soft beds, warm blankets. She imagined how it would feel to give her son that kind of life. For a moment she closed her eyes and saw him smiling again, like he used to before everything went wrong. But dreams don't fill empty stomachs. Dreams don't stop the cold wind. She opened her eyes and held her son closer. Her heart was loud inside her chest. She knew she couldn't keep walking like this. She had to make a choice, one that scared her. For weeks she had heard people talk about a wealthy man who lived in that house. Some said he was strict, others said he was cold and distant, but they all agreed on one thing. He had money, power, and a heart no one truly understood. May had never spoken to him, but she knew his name, and she knew that people feared him. Her mind was full of noise. Should I go to him? What if he turns me away? What if he gets angry? What if he laughs? But then she looked at her son again. His head rested on her shoulder, his breathing weak, his eyes half closed from tiredness. She felt something inside her break, not her love, but the last piece of her pride. Pride doesn't feed a child. Pride doesn't stop the cold. Pride doesn't save lives. She slowly walked toward the gate. Her steps were small and shaky. She could feel her hands tremble. She wanted to cry, but didn't. She had cried too much already. When she reached the gate, she stood silently, unsure how to begin. A guard stood there, surprised to see a woman with a child at that hour. He looked at her torn clothes, her tired face, and the little boy in her arms. He frowned. "What are you doing here?" he asked in a firm voice. May swallowed hard. Her voice was weak but steady. I need to speak to the master of the house." The guard shook his head. "It's late. Go away," but May didn't move. "Please," she said. "Just one moment." "I beg you." The guard hesitated. He had seen many people come to ask for favors before, but something in May's voice made him pause. Maybe it was the way her hands clutched the child. Maybe it was the way her voice broke at the end. He sighed, then disappeared inside. May stood in the cold, her heart beating fast. She felt small and powerless, like a leaf in a storm. Minutes later, the door opened. A tall man stepped out wearing a long coat. His eyes were sharp and calm. He looked at her silently, then at the child in her arms. His presence was strong, like someone who was used to power. "What do you want?" His voice was quiet but firm. May couldn't breathe for a second. Her lips shook. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. She whispered. "I need help. My son is sick. We have nowhere to go. I can work. I can clean. I can do anything. Please, help us." He raised an eyebrow, not saying anything. His face didn't change, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. May lowered her head. She felt the tears burning behind her eyes. She didn't want to cry in front of him. She wanted to stay strong. But then she remembered the nights of hunger, the cold floor, the endless walking, the closed doors. She remembered her son's weak voice calling Mama. She couldn't hold it anymore. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Take me in. I will do whatever you want. Just save my son. Please." The words came out softly, not as a demand, but as a plea from a mother's breaking heart. She wasn't thinking about herself anymore. She was thinking only of the little boy in her arms who deserved a chance to live. The man stood there silently. His face showed no emotion, but inside something shifted. He had heard many things in his life. People begging for money, power, and favor. But this voice was different. It carried no greed, no trick, only the raw, honest sound of a mother's love. May didn't know what he would decide. She only knew she had given up the last piece of her pride to save her child. And in that cold night under the light of the gate, she waited, with tears in her eyes and hope trembling in her heart. The night air was quiet. May stood there, holding her son in her arms, waiting for the man to speak. She could hear the soft rustle of the leaves above her and the distant sound of a dog barking. Every second felt like a full minute. Her heart beat fast and her knees felt weak. She didn't know what his answer would be. She only knew she had no other place to go. The man looked at her for a long time. He didn't speak, and May lowered her eyes, thinking maybe she had made a mistake. Maybe he would tell her to leave. Maybe he would close the gate like everyone else. But then he did something unexpected. He walked closer to her slowly and looked down at the small boy wrapped in the thin shawl. "What is his name?" the man asked in a quiet voice. May's heart jumped at the sound of his question.
"His name is Wei," she said softly. The man nodded slowly.
Then he looked at the guard and said, "Bring them inside." For a moment, May couldn't move. Her feet were frozen. She didn't fully understand what was happening. The guard came forward, gently opened the gate, and gestured for her to step in. May walked inside carefully as if she was stepping into a dream. The light inside the compound was warm. The house was big, and the garden was filled with the smell of flowers. It was a world completely different from the cold street outside. She followed the guard to a small sitting area. The floor was clean, the air was warmer, and the walls shone with soft yellow light. May sat down slowly, still holding her son. His face was pale and his body felt weak. The man sat in a chair across from her. He didn't say anything for a few minutes, then he spoke again. "How long has the boy been sick?" May took a deep breath. "A few days," she whispered. "I tried to keep him warm, but he keeps getting weaker. I don't have money for a doctor." The man's face stayed calm. He called one of his helpers and told him to bring a doctor immediately. Then he asked the guard to bring food. May looked at him, surprised. She had expected rejection. Instead, he was helping. Within minutes, a tray of warm soup and bread was placed on the table. May had not eaten for a full day, but before touching anything, she fed a spoonful to her son. His tiny hands held the spoon weakly, but he tried to eat. Watching him eat made tears form in her eyes. She whispered softly to him, "Eat, my little one. You're safe now." When the doctor arrived, he carefully checked the boy. He gave him some medicine and told May that the child needed rest, warmth, and proper food. He also said that Wei would get better soon if taken care of. May nodded, tears falling down her face. She had carried her son through cold streets, hunger, and fear. Hearing that he would be okay felt like a weight lifting from her heart. The man sat silently watching them. He was not used to such scenes in his home. His house was usually quiet, with only servants and workers. He had everything in life: money, a big house, respect, but his heart had grown distant from people. When May had spoken those desperate words outside his gate, something inside him had stirred. After the doctor left, he told May she could stay in a small room in the house with her son until the boy recovered. May couldn't believe what she was hearing. She bowed her head and whispered softly, "Thank you. Thank you so much." The next few days were quiet but full of small changes. For the first time in weeks, May and Wei slept in a warm room. The bed was soft and a thick blanket kept them from the cold. The servants brought food regularly and May made sure her son ate every bite. Slowly, Wei began to smile again. His cheeks turned pink and his voice grew stronger. May would watch him sleep at night and whisper prayers of thanks. During the day, May helped around the house. She cleaned, cooked, and did small chores. She wanted to repay the kindness she had received. The servants were surprised at how hard she worked. She didn't complain, not even once. She was quiet, gentle, and always grateful. The man, who was often busy with his business, began to notice her more. He saw how carefully she took care of her son, how she always thanked everyone, and how she carried herself with quiet strength. She had come to his gate with nothing but courage and a mother's love. And now, little by little, she was rebuilding her dignity. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Wei ran through the garden, laughing softly. His small feet touched the grass as May watched him with a smile. It was the first time in months she had seen him so happy. The man stood near the steps, watching them quietly. He had never thought a small child's laughter could fill his house with so much warmth. He walked over and said to her, "He's recovering well." May turned and nodded, her eyes full of gratitude. "Yeah," she said softly. "I owe everything to your kindness." He shook his head slightly. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "You're a mother who loves her child. That is something rare and strong." May didn't know what to say. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "I'll work as much as I can. I don't want to be a burden." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're not a burden," he said finally. From that day, something changed between them. He began to speak to her more often, not just as someone staying in his house, but as a person. She told him a little about her past, her small home, the happy days, and the pain of losing everything. He didn't interrupt her. He simply listened. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to him with such honesty. As weeks passed, May's hard work and gentle nature earned everyone's respect. Even the strict head servant spoke kindly to her. Wei became a cheerful boy again, always smiling and running around the house. He liked to sit near the man's study and play quietly while the man worked. One night, a storm shook the city. Rain poured down heavily and thunder roared in the sky. May sat with her son near the window watching the rain. She remembered the night she had stood outside that very gate, scared and cold. She hugged Wei tightly, whispering, "We're safe now." The man walked past and saw her holding her son, their faces soft in the glow of the lamp. Something about the sight warmed his heart. He had always lived in a house full of silence, but now it felt like a home. The next morning he spoke to May again. "Would you like to stay here longer?" he asked. "Not as a guest, but as part of the house. You can work here, earn a living, and raise your son without worry." May felt her breath catch in her chest. She had not expected such kindness. She placed her hand over her heart and said softly, "Yes, if you allow it. I'll work hard and never let you down." And from that day on, their lives began to change slowly, like a small seed growing into a tree. May worked with dignity and built a new life step by step. Her son grew stronger each day, playing in the garden, going to school, and smiling brighter than ever. The man who once lived in silence found warmth in the sound of the child's laughter and the gentle strength of May's presence. Years later, Wei became a young man full of life and gratitude. He often remembered that cold night when his mother stood at the gate and whispered those painful words. But he never saw her as weak. To him, she was the strongest person in the world, a mother who faced the storm with nothing but love in her heart. And every time May looked at him, healthy and happy, she felt no regret. Her heart still carried the scars of hardship, but now it also carried something stronger: hope. Because sometimes, life changes not with big miracles but with a single act of kindness and a mother's unbreakable love.